Well, welcome to Forensic Happy Hour. And it's, you know, I'm kind of excited. Well, I'm really excited about this because I would say that Danny, I've known him the longest out of anyone that I've had of any of the guests. It's been a long time. I don't want to say how long because then that obviously dates us both. So we'll try not to. I might ask him exactly how long that has been, but it should be good. I mean, a lot of topics I think we'll try to get to. Of course, never want to keep him or the guest too much longer. But hey, so Danny Garcia, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Lee.
Yes, yes, and I wanted to make sure that you had ample time to well, first I'm going to say cheers to you. Ample time to come up with all of the great things that you have done in your life, and you can start. Like I tell people, if they want to start when they're say 3 years old and have that, I mean, right from there, that's good. So just as explain to people. I know a lot of people watching the show, either live or after when it's playing, know you. So just hey, fill in and give us a little idea about how you got started, what obviously with law enforcement, what got you into either doing for your forensics, now into obviously with your photography stuff. So let it rip,
Let it rip. Wow. Well, yeah. Cheers.
and I'll sit here and
By the way, what are you having today? What is that?
this is a buku.
A book,
Buku.
whatever. See, I don't drink beer,
Yes.
so I I,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
I
Buku.
opted for Mike's Harder cider. You know.
Oh, good. And this is Buku, and it's in my. It's you see, it's in a cup. It's a Dick Shooter, and that's actually an IPA.
All right.
So, and I can tell you where that came from, but it's actually
All right.
I think it's a river. It's a river in Idaho.
Oh,
So, anyway, I digress. It's your
that's all
turn.
right. All right. Cool. So, let's see. I was born way back. No, I'm not going to go that far back. But yes, we go far back, Lee. In fact, I was just telling my class that I finished teaching yesterday. I was down in Orlando teaching class, and I was saying, there's a dude that's responsible for me that got me into training on digital forensics, and that guy is now I don't know, some CEO or something like that. What the hell's going on?
Right. I'm just a pod show guy,
A
a pod
podcast
show
guy.
host. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
So
Me and Joe Rogan.
yeah, I actually, because it's National Police Week and all that stuff, I actually posted something today on LinkedIn. And all in all, I've been in law enforcement. This is sick. 37 freaking years if you count everything. Going back to age 15, I started as an explorer with customs. And after that, when I moved out of LA, went to Miami, I kind of became known as Dan Miami from that point forward. Um, I started in law enforcement there in '92. Went for 20 years with Miami-Dade Police Department. When I left there, I was a sergeant of the digital forensics section. And I left in 2012 to go private sector. And when I did that, or one of the reasons I did that is because I was teaching for you for a lot. So back in the MFI days, if we could still say that, yeah, we could say that. Good
Oh
show.
yes, I say that all the time. I find challenge coins, bags, all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff.
So back in the MFI days, we did that, and then Access Data, and then life changes, and I ended up contracting a bit for Celebrate after I left my full-time job, and I had a company down in Miami before I moved up here to Georgia now, which I'm living in Georgia. You didn't know that, I don't think.
I did
Okay,
Atlanta.
yeah.
Yeah.
So here I was with Celebrite full time for 6 years until March of last year, where there were some changes, if you will, and I was one of those changes that ended up going solo and private again. Set up my company here, which is called DFIR LLC. So cool shirt. You're advertising my company. Yeah. um,
Shout out to Kevin Pagano.
Ah,
He's got all
very
the.
cool, very cool. So I set up the company. I haven't, surprisingly, I haven't done a lot of that type of work in the last couple of years. I actually have been doing a little bit of consulting here and there, but not the actual digital forensics work. Here in Georgia, it's a little bit different. It's one of those states that requires a PI license, which, again, my opinion, it's a money grab. I challenge a PI to tell me what digital forensics is all about and how to do it, and why that's needed, I don't know. But anyways, last year I decided that I was going to finally push forward with my photography, because back in '08, when I started really traveling, I started doing some photography during my travels, and since then I've been in a lot of places, 45 countries now, and 38 of the 50 states. So I've been very fortunate and blessed on that. And the photography has kind of taken off. I'm focusing mainly on real estate, but I've been contracted for a couple of video shoots as well. I just edited a video for an investment group here locally, and funny enough, I never expected this, but they sent me part of the footage, and part of the footage came from LA. It would happen to be one of the original sharks from Shark Tank. So now I have that under my belt as, hey, I've produced a video with one of the sharks. So it's kind of cool. And that's it, really, for me. I'm loving it.
That's it?
The
Really?
area, and loving being able to go hiking and all that stuff around here.
So, I mean, that's it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right. So, thinking back though too, as I was kind of preparing for it, and like I told you when we were kind of just chatting before the show, you really didn't have to tell me a whole bunch, because obviously we've known each other for a long time, and I already had some thoughts of obviously things to talk about. One of which is, do you remember? And I was trying to remember what year it was that MFI, we came down to, I don't know if it was a 101 class, had a group, even had a guy from Boise that was in the class as well, and at your facility, your training facility. Do you remember what year that was?
Not offhand, but let's see. That had to have been before '09, I would think.
Oh yeah, oh no, for sure. Yeah, no, it was before that, and I was trying to think if it was like
Well,
'07. Oh,
I attended 101, I believe, in either '05 or '06, and then I went to 202, and
well, so when did you go to ISIS?
uh, '04, July '04 is when, so 2005. Yeah.
So was that how soon after that?
IASIS. I went to IASIS in 2005.
Did you have the MFI class that you actually hosted at Miami-Dade?
It would probably be either I would say '07 to be safe.
Yeah, maybe around
Yeah.
there. Yeah. So it was funny. I still tell the story, not necessarily about the training, but about staying at the Doral and having a massage. Probably the best one I've ever had in my entire life.
Now it's called.
I remember that.
It's not called the Doral anymore. You know that.
No, it's not.
It's,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, right. So anyway, but so in doing that, and I know that you were doing forensics way before that, because you started the lab there at Miami-Dade,
I
right?
didn't start it actually. I started in the lab in 2004, and when I joined it, there were 2 officers and 1 sergeant that were assigned there.
Was Tracy there?
No,
No.
no.
Yeah. So, but you did. So I remember, wasn't there a big semi?
Yeah, that was a federal grant that we ended up getting. Actually, the sergeant prior to me wrote everything up on that. And he ended up getting, I want to say it was 500 and some odd $1,000. And we ended up creating, or he ended up designing this whole thing, a entire mobile lab with 7 workstations and all that good stuff. So everybody knows it at IASIS as the big black truck that came up from Miami.
Right. The big black
Yeah.
truck. So I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, what got you into, I guess, on the law enforcement side of it, I mean, doing or getting into the forensics, or doing digital forensics? What kind of propelled you into that?
Pretty much pure luck. I was working in the training bureau at the time and doing the field training program, and I see this memo come across the desk that said, we're looking for someone to be a police officer / digital forensic examiner. And I said, what the heck is this? And I went to my lieutenant and I said, hey, do you know anything about this? And he goes, yeah, they got this thing over at Professional Compliance, Internal Affairs. and they do computer forensic exams for all these cases and stuff. And why? Do you know anything about computers? I said, yeah, I've built them for many years, and I kind of know all this stuff like DOS and Windows 3.11 and Windows 9.8 and all this stuff that was on there. And I was like, come on, we can do this. So I went and interviewed, and it was probably the toughest interview I'd ever done in my life, except for when I went to teach for you.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. So that was a tough
it
interview.
was.
Wow. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. But if we think about it though too, and a lot of the people and the guests that I speak about or speak to have similar, right? Similar backgrounds, and I always say this, I'm like a broken record, but I guess is they tinkered with computers, right? They built computers, and especially in their law enforcement. Next thing you know, you're like, or a sergeant's like, dude, so there's an opening. It's just to do this forensic stuff. But I mean, I mean, I see you, on a computer, so obviously you know how to
Yeah.
do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty typical. And then, but but obviously you stayed in it a long time, so you kind of liked it.
Oh, yeah, I kind of liked it. Yeah, you could say that. I went in there as an officer. I did the ISIS thing. I did my internship, and was mentored by one of the guys that really started doing this stuff back in '96. I remember some of his case boxes, Gordy Angus down in Miami, who's now retired and enjoying life diving and enjoying the water. But he was my mentor, and then I ended up becoming his boss when I got promoted to sergeant, which was kind of interesting.
So if you started well, didn't start, but from when you started in the forensic side of it in law enforcement, what did it grow to once you retired?
Well,
I mean, how many people were doing
yeah,
it? How many cases, that type of stuff, like volume?
it's hard to remember the number of cases because that was like an exponential number. And I remember back then we were reporting stuff by the megabytes and terabytes. If we got lucky, we got to the terabytes. But in 2012, I left with 8 full-time examiners and a civilian who was doing data entry. She's still there. I think there is one, maybe 2 guys that are still there. All the rest of them are brand new, or at least newer in the last 10 years. Um, there are 2 sergeants in there, I believe now, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe a third. I don't know. I've got to reach out and see what's going on down there. But number of cases, I believe in 2012 when I left, or 2011, which was my last full year there, we had 600 and some odd cases, and out of that, maybe 20%, 30% were cell phones, I would say. Um, Keeping in touch with the community and everything else, we now know that that number is completely, totally flipped over. So you'll get maybe 20% computers today, and everything else is mobile.
Right, right. So I guess in part of that on the law enforcement and then working up, how's the transition from law enforcement and into also now into say the private space? What I mean for people that might be wanting to transition out of law enforcement and job, I guess, do you have any advice for them?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, keep your darn certifications active, because those sometimes you're never going to be able to have the opportunity to do it again. One of the things that I did for all my guys is I told them go to as much training as you possibly can. And I remember back in the days of the All Access Pass, we bought 8 of those for everybody, and everybody went to training. I ended up having to track how much training was saved, and back then, by just travel alone and tuition, if you will, was over $100,000 in money saved. So absolutely keep those certifications. Make connections, guys. I still have, and I just said this to my class this past week. I still have connections going back to 2004 when I went to forensics in the first place. There was a class that the Secret Service had sent me to as part of a group, and we went up to New York. I don't think I could mention the name of the cover company, but there was this training for all feds except for like 5 locals, and I was one of them, which was awesome. And I still have connections with those folks today. Those are the people that are going to be probably the most important people in your lives going forward into the private sector. Some things are slightly different as far as custodians and as opposed to your and targets as opposed to your subjects of investigation and things like that. But I mean, looking at the data, it's all the same. I mean, the data is the data, and you're going to do your job, do it well, be prepared to. I hate to say it, defend yourself, but defend yourself on the stand by knowing your stuff and doing your own testing and validation. Because if you don't do that, you're kind of putting yourself in a really, really bad position.
Yeah, and I think that that's very, very important. Not only just obviously staying in touch with people, but I think that the point that you are making about one with the training side of it, extremely important. Um, but if we start talking about data, right? And I talk to people that are in the law enforcement side of it. I talk to people who are in corporate. I talk to cybersecurity people, and it really comes down to, again, even on and I have some great examiners that work legal, as either on the defense. But the thing is that people need to understand is data doesn't lie, right? So, it's the only issue that often is ran into is that data, if you're not doing, say, a thorough examination, if you're not validating information, if you're not, going corroborating information, your data, you're going to try to make it speak the way you want to,
Oh yeah.
right? So what's the issue? What do you see? I mean, it's just, I mean, obviously you know the answer to this, and it's just one of those questions. Is I mean, how important is it for people to not just come to a conclusion based upon this piece of evidence and this is what they were looking for, but kind of take in the totality of all of the evidence?
I mean, you've got to look at it all because even going back to, I want to go back to my very first case that I was ever assigned. Actually, there was a fraud case where we had several attorney generals that had gotten complaints about this guy that was basically defrauding people all over the country. And when that was assigned to me, I looked at everything and I ended up having to go back to Gordy, my mentor at the time, who I was working things under. And I said, you know what, man? This guy was scammed himself. And it ended up that they ended up not prosecuting the guy because we were able to show all of the communication that he was having with the other people that were scamming him into selling this stuff and never shipping it and keeping them, a quarter of the money or whatever the commission was. So you've got to look at everything, because if you're not, you're going to be in a really, really bad position. Remember that the other side is always going to be able to go back and look at stuff, and sometimes they've gone through the same or better training than you have. So you've got to be ready.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and obviously things change so quickly right now, and training departments are extremely important. How important is it right now? And I mean, well, not even right now, because you had mentioned with the All Access Pass. How important was it that those were, say, online with live instructors? As you remember, we did it, with Access Data, and the majority of training, obviously that's consumed, I would say, and just from what I know, is online, right? Either a live instructor, you can be wherever you want. Yeah, I mean, do you see that as the primary, I guess, training vehicle right now? Is actually live online, that you're able to go and be wherever you want, and you don't have that training or travel expense?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you and I both have been doing live online training for a long time and teaching people and everything else, and it was interesting during or when COVID hit. All live in-person training kind of went on a big pause, and everything scrambled to go live online. Everybody was trying to figure it out. Well, we already had that, and I was asked to kind of spearhead the whole thing when I was working with my prior employer, and ended up having to teach folks this is how you do it, and so on and so on. It depends on who the instructor is. I really, really believe in that, because there are some instructors that will engage students, and I will, if you're ever in one of my classes or you have been, you will know, because I'm watching your screen and I'm going to call you out and I say, Lee, I'm not seeing any kind of movement and we're supposed to be working on this exercise. Are you still with us? I'm going to call you out, and yes, it's going to be in front of everybody, but I need to be held accountable as an instructor just as much as you do as a student. So live online, it really depends on the instructor as far as the effectiveness. I know that there's some people that really hate it, but then there's a lot of people that love it if you do it right. And I think the interactivity is huge. The platform that is being used is huge. The expense savings obviously is great. So that's definitely something that I don't think is going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right, and neither do I. I think that it's just it'll continue on. I mean, it's a very valuable, I guess, training method,
Yeah.
right? However, I think so. I don't want to equate this to because it's really not. Anyway, remote workers, right? Because we deal with that now, just in just how the world is right now. And I'm not a big, and people get mad at me, but I'm not a huge proponent of that. Simply because I think that people need human interaction, not necessarily be micromanaged, but I think there's a lot of things about human interaction. Now, there's a lot of jobs that can be done remote easily, right? But I think it takes a certain type of person. I still think it takes a certain type of person also for live online, right? Because like you said, if you don't have the, say, your team viewer where you have the version that you're able to go in and you can see all the computer screens, right? You have all the computer screens, whatever software you're utilizing, but you can see all their screens of those users. If you don't have that, you're kind of relying obviously on that person. But then again, they're the ones that are footing the bill. But you're like me, is that one, if I'm put into that position to actually be able to train someone, I want to make sure that they are benefiting from the training because it's a reflection of you as the instructor if they go back to their company or their agency, right? And they're like, yeah, I don't know anything,
Yeah. Yep.
right? Right? And then you're the asshole, right? I mean, that you have all this stuff. So, you know, that's the problem is, and half the time you're thinking like, I got to make sure I train this guy well because he's going to go back and either say, something, and now you're just marketing yourself.
Yeah.
But on the serious side of that, do you is there something in your that you remember that in part of your training? Because the majority of stuff, obviously, you've done a lot of training, as in been an instructor in this training. Is there a scenario that you remember just because it was one of those all of a sudden the lights came on this certain person and you're like, oh my gosh, this person finally got it. I mean, do you
Oh
remember
yeah.
a time?
It's almost every class. One of my favorite actually was it? I think it was December, either November or December this past year. I went over to Savannah for a live class. It was one of those rare live and in person classes that we were doing again, and that I got at least. And I went out there and they had five guys right from Georgia here, and right from my backyard. They have been using PA for years. And I showed them one little stupid thing. I said, if you guys get a warrant return, you could just go file, open, add, go to your little warrant or your common source, I think is the menu. And then they see all of these options for iCloud and Google Takeout and all this stuff. And they were like, are you kidding me? And it was like a huge moment just for them. And that was a big reward for me because it was these guys that have been doing it for 5, 6, 7 years that never knew that that was even part of, the product and stuff. And it was like, whoa, that's awesome. And then just even little things when you go into certain places and you show them a little bit of SQLite, queries and whatever, and they said, "Whoa, you can do that." I said, "Yeah, you can do that, and you can report it this way, and you can do it that way, and you can do it this way." And do you know what a blob is?
Right, right, right,
So, yeah,
right.
they're
Yeah,
good
no, I think
times.
again, and it's one of those kind of rhetorical questions. It is, and on the training side of it, you get that, right? And I guess that's probably, I'm just maybe speaking for myself, that, that would always kind of keep you going, is that you recognize that people are either one listening to you, or two, and then you go and follow and see some of these guys, and quite honestly, I mean, I'm gonna get sentimental, but one of in especially in the training side with MFI, right? You, Kevin DeLong, Bruce Downey, John Bear. a lot of these guys, right, that initial the training and the training group on all of these, every single one of you guys, I haven't talked to Bruce in a while, but every single one of you guys have gone on and obviously continue to do some great things. And it's one of those that it kind of makes me happy, right? You know, and I don't necessarily think it had anything to do with me. I think it had everything with one of you guys' personalities, and that you guys kind of got it, and you're the ones that wanted to go and transfer that knowledge to people. So anyway, sorry, I got a little
It's all right. It's right. Hey, listen, I've said it at conferences that if it weren't for you calling me up and saying, hey, you went through this class and I know you teach at the department, you want to come and try to teach forensics? And if it weren't for you, I would have never traveled the world, have probably at this point 7,000 students that I've taught all over the place, and been able to do what I've done. So yeah, I thank you, because it's true.
No. Again, people make their own paths, and obviously, again, with the training, and you know, I think that's a good, and the people that are listening, especially if you want to get into and you kind of do the training, like you had said, it's the most important thing is one, engage people, right? Be very engaging. You know, it's not just gonna, you know, once in a while you're just training and training the same stuff, but obviously you as a trainer or you as a representative of some company need to understand and keep educating yourselves, right? You need to make sure that you are going through all these items, because you know people are going to ask you questions. You're never going to have all the right answers,
Yeah.
right? But obviously keeping that and keeping educated. So I would say, you know, people engage with those instructors that, and you know, obviously that they remember. So again, so let's go on to actually talking about the rest of the world, right? So you've traveled a bit, and you've been to many different countries, many different areas, and you mentioned that's kind of like what sparked your, I mean, a love. I would say it's a love, because I've seen some of your photography. I mean, years back too. You've been doing it forever. You know, on your travels, you would actually have some of these images, and I know you sold some of the stuff,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And so where's a place that you just weren't amazed by your awesome pictures, but just amazed by how many pictures you can probably take because of how beautiful it was?
Let's see, which one do I go to first? No, I would say with with a high degree of certainty. Let's go forensic testimony here. With a high degree of certainty, I would say New Zealand South Island is at the top of the list. That place is just out of this world.
Was it because of the Lord of the Rings? You saw like Bilbo
No,
Baggins
man,
stuff?
that's North Island stuff.
Okay.
How do you like that? Yeah, no. Actually, one of my photography mentors used to live in Austin, Texas. He's probably the most followed photographer in the world. His name is Trey Ratcliffe. He is the one that I learned how to shoot the way that I shoot from, starting with the free tutorials and things like that. And then I started just doing more and more and more. I met him several times. Uh, Unfortunately, every time that I went to South Island, because now he lives in Queenstown, down in New Zealand, every time I went down there, he was off on another adventure somewhere. This guy travels a ton, and we have a very parallel story. He was in I believe it was some kind of IT job or something like that. But the bottom line is he started traveling for work, and that's where he started picking up his photography, and he started just going, and now he's just this world-renowned photographer that has tons of, you know, $250,000 freaking pictures that are being sold and stuff. I am nowhere near that, uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's probably at the top of the list. The scenery there is just amazing.
So let me, I mean, a complete newbie, right? And this is actually really good to have this conversation. Not that I'm going to be a photographer at all, but I like to educate myself on things I have absolutely no knowledge on. So, I mean, would you, because I know that photographers typically have a set or a certain, you know, landscape, you know, people. Where would you put yourself?
See, that's tough right now because I think I'm in a little bit of a transition, if you will. I have always been landscape because it's just nobody complains that they're too fat, that they don't like their wrinkles, that this or that. So landscape has always been awesome, and being able to capture the depth, the colors, the clouds, the way that they are, just, that's what really got me into it. But lately, because I'm doing the video shooting and things like that, I just did that, that interview scene and stuff like that. It's almost like I'm trying to stop myself from enjoying that too much because I actually enjoy that. So I still love landscape, but I am enjoying dealing with the people and getting them on video more so than photography, because the thing with photography is you capture that moment, and yeah, it's an awesome moment and it's a memory for them, but they judge themselves, I think, a little harsher than on video.
Right. Right. So on with the and what type of equipment? I mean, yeah, I don't think you're going out with your iPhone, right?
No.
No,
No.
no. Is that a completely different subset? Is like people, these guys are so awesome. They go out with their iPhone and actually capture that. I know. Remember Carl,
Yep.
right? From him. So he did a lot of photography and then started getting into when, and this was back obviously when iPhones really kind of transitioned into a little bit better camera. Started, and it was like competitions, right? For with iPhone pictures. And I know that you're not doing that, but I mean, what type of equipment do you use?
Um, for years and years, I shot a Canon 70D, and then I went to a 7D, which became a bigger, awesomer machine. And then again, following my mentor, he switched over to Sony, and I saw all of his reviews about it and stuff. And I said, you know what? I'll give it a shot. And I made the investment, and I got a Sony A7 R2, which is this little guy here. At the time, it was actually it's still my first full frame camera, which means it uses the entire sensor, and it was pretty amazing. Now they've got just the Alpha, which is a monster machine. This thing shoots 42 megapixels, so every freaking picture is 40 megs on the SD card. I just filled one up today. I filled up a 64 gig today. Plus, luckily, I had my backup. But that,
So isn't it great not to have
yeah,
film? Because all you do is just like, dude, yeah, whatever. I just put another card in here. You're just like, yeah, I just filled this up. Yeah, you don't have to go take it to Costco and have all your
well,
stuff
even
processed.
better. It's hey, can you take it this way too? Sure, film is cheap, no problem. Because I do remember film. I did shoot film. I had an old Canon AE1, which was the very first automatic camera that Canon came out with for film. My dad had gave me that, and yeah, it's this thing is just a workhorse.
Do people are there some photographers that are just like, screw this, man. I'm used film forever.
Yeah, there's still some out there.
Oh, I bet
Yeah,
you 100%. I mean, it's like those people that are
yeah,
still, have like a Sanyo, flip
yep.
phone. They're like, screw this technology. This works for me just fine, right?
And by the way, the only reason I
So,
have this out, I've got that, and I've got two drones sitting here because I just went and shot some stuff today. So
oh yeah, so on the you do the photography with the drones as well, right? Do real estate?
pretty much everything. Yeah, but real
Yeah,
estate is
yeah,
probably 90% of what I'm doing right now.
right. And so with that, and just shifting just for a second on with the drone side of it, we all kind of got into drones because I'm like, dude, there's gonna be some cool stuff on this because I'm gonna find it and do forensics
Yeah.
on it. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, going, shit, I'm flying these things around, taking pictures of my house, taking pictures of other houses, doing all the other stuff. I started doing less of the forensic side of it, more of flying it around, right? Yeah, I remember Brian Hills. Brian Hills, like, hey, yeah, dude. When he was training for us and everything else, and he's doing all this, he goes, man, I took a drone, got this drone, and I'm gonna go and fly it. We took it up to my place, out in the woods and everything else like that. Check out this video. So it was a fantastic video of this thing just buzzing this river, just flying this river. Then all of a sudden, boom, underwater. Then back out of the water. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. However, it filled up with water. You had to take it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
So, but hey, it was pretty cool. So on the with the drone side of it, um, I mean, you have to have a license for
Oh
that,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. For any
Yeah.
type of commercial work, or if you plan on, here's the deal. If you are just a recreational flyer and you buy a drone, register it. That's the one thing that a lot of people don't do. It's $5 to register it. It's no big deal. Register it and fly it and take your pictures, take your videos, have great stuff, great memories. That's all recreational. There is a recreational test now that you have to take. It's all online. It's free, I believe, now for recreational. But if you're not going to be making any money on it, then you're fine with just that. And where I was going with is, if you intend on making money with it, that's where you have to go and you do the Part 107 licensing. I'm on my second renewal that's coming up now. It's every 2 years you've got to do a recert, if you will. The test, a lot of people say it, and I'll say it too, it's pretty ridiculous, because you've got to know all sorts of stuff like, meteorology, and you've got to know how to read a map as far as the aviation map. And
because you're staring at a map when you're
no,
flying it, right?
because
You're just like, yeah, you get that big, you go to the gas station, you get a big
yeah,
map, and you're doing
yeah,
this.
you say, what's a sectional map? What? And some people say, is that on Google? Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So yeah, you got to learn how to read these things, and you got to take a test and all of that. And it's a lot more than what is necessary, in my personal opinion, for flying a drone. The biggest rules is keep it in line of sight. Don't do stupid things. Don't fly over people unless you've got the right drone and the right permission. And it used to be that nighttime flying was illegal, but that changed. Before that changed, I had already gotten an FAA waiver for 107.29, which is the flying outside of daylight hours. So even today, there's still some things that you have to have that waiver for. But it's a cool hobby. If anybody's looking to get into it, don't spend a ton of money unless you're going to make money with them. I'm sitting on 5 drones now, so.
Yeah, I think when I was doing, I was in Singapore. I was in Singapore, and I had to get ready because I had to do this. It was a big drone thing down there. Because with the software anyway.
Yeah.
And DJI was there, and they were doing all their stuff, but that's not the reason for my story. So I'm like getting ready with the DJI drone, because I'm like, hey, so I have it, and I have to get some. So I got to process this thing and share this thing. So I'm in the hotel, and it wasn't at the marina, but where the big, almost looks like the hand, but it's like a flower that's in
Yep.
there, right? So I'm in a hotel over here, and I just launched that off of my balcony, a drone. And I'm like flying that around at night, and I'm like, this is probably not the best thing to do. You see a little green and the red, and it's just flying. And I'm like, this is probably not the best. And I'm like, okay, I better bring it back. And so I'm bringing it back, and you know how good, you got to fly it pretty well to be able to get it back onto the balcony.
Yeah.
Yep, and I got it super close, and then it dropped straight down to the balcony below me.
All right.
Another floor.
All right, so
down, and it landed on there, and zzz, doing that. I had to go and knock on the door and say, hey, there's something blinking on. Can you go get it for me on your balcony? Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a
I'm sure we
drone
all have
story.
stories of that.
I got a drone story in Singapore too. It was one of my first drone. I travel out there. I went to teach a class, and I said, all right, I'm going to fly. And I was staying at the Sheraton. If you've ever stayed at Sheraton, right next door is, if not one of the most expensive condos there. If you have ever seen it, it's the one where you drive your car in. It has an elevator for your car. It brings you up to your floor. So I'm up there and I'm flying.
Sounds pretty late.
Yeah, it's come on, it's your garage in your condo. Come on. So I'm sitting there and I'm flying around. I get a picture of this Ferris wheel and stuff, and I'm right by the building, and one of the motors seizes, and down it comes, probably about 5 feet from me, in pieces. It was an old Phantom 2. So yeah, that was my first official crash, which wasn't even my fault. Just seized, one of the motors seized. So yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah, I know. So with going back to kind of the travels and the world travels type of stuff, do you enjoy the traveling all over the world?
I'm done with it, man. I'm done with it.
I say that because I'm like, man, you know what? I mean, I don't think I was home for like 2 years at one
Yeah.
point,
Well, I can tell
doing that
you
stuff.
that Las Vegas alone, I have spent well over a year on the ground in Las Vegas alone. And I know that you
Oh
Vegas
yeah, yeah. So let's talk about that because I remember this. Is it blackjack
for
or
what? Would
poker?
I play at the machine?
Yeah,
You mean video poker?
yeah. Is it video
Yeah,
poker?
that's where I hang out.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I remember that. I
Yeah.
remember that. So yeah, I know. I'm kind of on the same thing right now. Is well, it's been a little bit just like you know what? Yeah, yeah. I travel a bit, just a little bit, but yeah. The only time I want to go out of country now is if I'm actually going on
Yep.
vacation. Right.
Yep.
That's about it. But anyway, let's go back to forensics real quick. So transitioning from and with say computers because we all kind of started with computer forensics,
Yep.
right? And brought some of these things in, and we're and then obviously into with mobile devices, and then IoT and drones and everything else. But I mean, how do you, back 20 years when obviously we're doing this stuff, what do you see now in, and we talked about making sure that we do a big examination, make sure we look at everything, but I mean, have things changed in the examination, even when we talk about computers, when we start talking about the volume of data? I mean, in your training and in what you're doing right now, or even just seeing what's going on, do you think that is going to or has transitioned into more a triage type?
It's interesting you mentioned triage because we will in the advanced courses we'll teach things like using iLeap and ALeap just to do some triaging to figure out where you're going to start going. Um,
Shout out to Alexi. We'll just do that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
No, I said shout out to Alexi.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm
iLeap and
sorry.
ALeap.
So we'll teach on that because it's true. There's so much stuff that you've got to go through that why are you going to go and try to figure out where to start when you have tools that are going to help you get there, at least get you into the right direction. I don't. I mean, if anybody thinks that we're going to be seeing less data, I think they're living under five rocks, not just one.
Yeah.
We're going to see more and more and more data. I have a feeling that if you ever, if you don't already do cloud stuff, you're going to be forced to do it. I preach that in class every time. I remind law enforcement officers that, and even law enforcement leaders, that if you don't have a cloud product today, you're going to need one. And if you're afraid,
Isn't that funny how they still think that it's just the devil?
yeah, I would
I'm
say
like,
that's
guys, I mean, are you just because you're lazy? The stuff that's in there, man, you gotta figure this
well,
stuff
I
out.
give them the justification too. I mean, listen,
Yeah, of course.
most I actually I don't know. Is it every state or most states are single party consent? So if that's the case, then why aren't you getting your cooperative victim and witness and bring them in? Let them put their freaking password in and say, listen, after this extraction, go ahead and change it. We don't want anything. We just want to get this preserved.
Right,
And now you got both
right.
sides of the conversation. You're done. But there's so many law enforcement agencies afraid of that stuff. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. I know, and I mean to the triage side of it, that was always, something that we always talked about is, man, we got to make sure that you're going to go in and that you have all the information that you need, which you still do, right? You have to be able to go back on things. You have to make sure that one, you have something that, hey, I need to go back and either look at something or I need to make sure that I have all the evidence there. But as for being able to say dive into that information, I think that's really where it kind of comes down to is eliminating the 3 days of going over one piece of evidence. Which what, it's hard for me to say that because I'm like, hey, I want to look at every zero and one type of thing. But the issue is it's very very difficult, if not impossible, with the devices that we have, even in a mobile device. You know, even a mobile device and shit. I mean, if you got a terabyte SD card that's running on some of these things, man, it's just that's extremely difficult to do.
yeah, absolutely. And it's it's only going to get worse. Not only space, but I think we're going to run into new forms of encryption that we're just not going to be able to play with for a while. So, enjoy it while you can is what I think.
Yeah, and again, I think that's why it's important too, especially with the cloud side of it, right? If a device is completely locked down, removed any access, either be it encryption or some way to get that data off the phone, everything's stored. I mean, there's third-party app. Every application is going to be stored somewhere within a cloud source, right? So, now it comes down to people figuring out, okay, well, I guess, well, they should have done that a long time ago, right? With some of the information, and well, again, it's again the education part of it, of helping people understand really, the data's there, the data's available. It's just, how do you go about getting it? Where can you get it from,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, I
And,
know.
and there's
I'm just preaching to the choir.
and then the other thing, of course, is there is no company that's going to be able to support every single app. So examiners have to be educated in the ways of going into those SQLite databases, going and figuring out what plist or how have what information, what blobs are embedded with plist within. I'm sorry, what plists you could find inside of SQLite databases. There's just it's never going to end.
Yeah, I think that's super important too, right? That there are a lot of tools. I don't want to say a lot of tools. There are a few tools that are just fantastic, right? They cost you absolutely nothing. However, you have to make sure that one, you understand, right? You understand the format, you understand what you're doing. Get into and learn a little Python. Get into and try to understand how that database, or how there's property lists, or how there's log files, or how there's XML files. Yeah, I mean, once you do that, honestly, you can support anything. As long as you can get that information out, you're not relying on, simply saying, okay, please, and cross your fingers, please, tool, pull it out, right? That you're actually being able to go and drive into that data. And I think that, obviously with MFI, going back to MFI, I think we instilled that into a lot of people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, just making sure.
Yeah.
Making sure that we go in and drive into all of that information because it's there. Again, like you said at the beginning of it, data isn't lie. You have the information, the data's there. It's just a matter of how do you go and now, harvest that information
Yep.
out there,
Yeah, and then just to add to that, you're going to go out there and you're testifying. Remember that the other side is going to try to make you sound stupid, if you will, or at least not as qualified as their expert. That's their job. Don't get pissed off about that. The data is the data. You can always, depending on how well you are with words, come back and say, hey, counsel, I understand what you're saying, but like I mentioned, this is the data that I recovered and verified that was on the device. Done. Or just move on.
right? Yeah, I think that's super important. I really do. So, hey, so before we go though, I want to make sure that you give out to people your some websites so they can come and buy your stuff.
Yeah, that's a fallacy right there. The two things. So, yes, I've sold some stuff, but it's really rare that people actually go out and buy prints because why? It's all digital. Um, I have had some people. I've actually got a commissioned work here, a drone commissioned work here locally in Atlanta. A lady had cut down this old tree, and she wanted to capture the stump with high quality to be able to print it out. And she did a 5 foot by 6 foot print. So that type of stuff, yeah, that type of stuff pays well, and it works. Um, I have made, as far as photography is concerned, from one photo, I've made the most from let's see, without giving out everything because I have to sign an NDA on this. I went to a casino in a big city and I had taken some photos and they reached out to me and wanted to use it. And I said, sure, here's the license. As long as you have my name on it, that's good to go. And then probably about 3 years later, I went back over there, saw it, and it wasn't credited to me. So I ended up getting a good, let's say, at least halfway to 5 digits, if not more, for that one license violation. So that was my biggest payout for a single photo yet.
Wow, you have to turn in Chris Angel.
Yeah, no, I won't go to that show. But anyway, That the website that I use now, it's Flying Lens. That's with a Z at the end,
Yep.
because somebody owns Flying Lens with an S at the end, and they want too much money for it. Yeah,
Darn it.
I've offered them a low ball figure. They said no. So anyway, Flying Lens with a Z, and it's turning out pretty well. And then my other one, which is like my old site, is MiamiHDRphotography.com. Again, not Miami anymore, but it is what it is.
And DFIR LLC,
Yeah,
the company,
that
right?
is for my digital forensics services that I do. If somebody calls and really needs something, then at the very least, I'll do consultation for the legal community without a problem.
Outstanding. Very good. I appreciate the time. You know, you're a busy man. I've tried to get you several times on there, and I appreciate you stopping by. Now you know it's a fantastic time, and I hope to have you again.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm gonna pack up and go and shoot one more house before it gets dark.
Okay, you better go do that. I do appreciate obviously the time that you're hanging out with
All
me.
right, man. Thanks.
Awesome. All right, talk to you. Fantastic. I mean, going way back, and like I said, I can, yeah, remember, obviously, uh, man, working a lot and running around and training, and it has been fantastic, obviously. And photography, make sure that you go and check it out because I know that I am. I'm gonna have to, he's gonna come do some drone stuff for me. Maybe I'll make him fly out here, and we'll have a good time. But as always, everyone have a great weekend. We'll be back again. I'll try to drum up some additional some guests on here. Maybe we'll get two at a time. That could be a possibility. So everyone have a great weekend. I appreciate it. Thanks.